Hello and welcome to Future Procurement. My name is Robert Freeman and today I'm delighted to talk with Stephany Lapierre, the CEO of Tealbook. Hello Stephany and welcome to our podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Stephany is on the direct call from Toronto, Canada. And today we agreed to discuss different aspects of supplier-buyer relationship and agility in procurement. We were having a short pre-talk with you, Stephany, and we discussed about some future directions of development in procurement. So future of procurement, this is what our podcast is about. So Stephany, I really look forward for you sharing some advice and big ideas about future of procurement. But before we really jump there, I would ask you to introduce yourself to our listeners and tell some of your background up till now.
Yeah, so I'm the CEO of Tealbook. I'm also the founder of Tealbook. Prior to building a technology company, I had started a strategic sourcing and procurement consulting firm about 12 years ago. I lived in Boston and I saw an opportunity. I had worked on both sides of the industry. I had been a stakeholder. I had also been on the supplier side doing business development and had saw a gap of how stakeholders or customers or even procurement were looking for information and wanted to increase efficiency in the process and able to help our clients at the time identify suppliers more effectively and the better suppliers. And so, I started this business, as I said, 12 years ago, was very fortunate to support hundreds of companies from Fortune 500 to a lot of emerging companies that were building their first sort of a commercial infrastructure. So the need to find a lot of new suppliers and put new processes in place and develop their technology roadmap and their talent for developing the function. So very much at the front line of managing the process to building the function. And that's where I had the opportunity to see some of the inefficiencies that all of the companies that I supported were facing, and also saw a solution that I decided after 8 years of fighting the idea, but I couldn't find it, and I could see it so clearly in my head, and I decided to do something about it and start building Tealbook.
Please tell us more about Tealbook, what it is, and how does it help to build better relationship between suppliers and buyers?
Yeah, so actually the first inspiration for the platform, and I think it's the story that people like the most, it was 12 years ago. So I had just started my consulting business and I was working directly with the stakeholders of a very large company. And before I left the meeting, she said, Steph, before you go, I want to introduce you to a company. They did amazing things for our business. And she says, give me 2 seconds. And she grabbed a giant binder from under a desk and put under a desk and started flipping through pamphlets and business cards. And I had a flight to go. So I remember saying, you know what, just send it to me when you find it. She goes, no, I'm going to find it. And it was a funny acronym. So she's like, as soon as I see the card, I'll remember. And she found the card. It took her literally 10 minutes. Okay. And she gave it to me and she says, give it back because I don't want to lose their contact information. And she put the card back in the binder and the binder back under her desk. And I remember the company itself, because we were also working with corporate, we're going through a major rationalization exercise with one of the big consulting firms, spending millions of dollars. And they're doing it without insight, but without real data from people that were directly in partnerships with the suppliers. And so decisions were driven more by sort of high level, but not by true information from people right. that, could see value and innovation into some of the partners that they were leveraging. It's at that moment that I knew that there's an opportunity. I said, how many binders, how many information are in people's head that are not transferred and are not visible to the organization and really used to capitalize on making faster and better decisions for the organization, for the people, and also for those suppliers who are sitting in binders, how much time and effort is being spent just to be found by the right type of customer at the right, for the right type of opportunity. It's a lot of the right timing, being at the right time at the right place, being thought of, remembered, and a lot of money and efforts are wasted if it's not, an opportunity that has been properly qualified on both sides. And so that's where really the inspiration came from. Spent, as I mentioned, about 8 years fighting the idea, having 3 children and a successful consulting business. I didn't see a need to add this to my plate. But after 8 years of working with large company who had very sophisticated, quote unquote procurement systems and tools, we're still faced with this really inefficient way of gathering information. And it was taking too long. By the time the business had a need for a supplier, and by the time they were able to initiate the sourcing process with the right supplier right from the outset, I saw a lot of friction there. Yeah. And I saw that procurement were still talking about earning their seat at the table and the value of engaging procurement, but they're not necessarily showing, and action speaks louder than words. And so what we've now quantified since then is that the average efforts time spent from the business stakeholder identifying a need for a supplier and for procurement to come back with a list of qualified suppliers. So that's looking for the information, asking around, contacting suppliers, waiting for a response, all the things that procurement does every day. Basically, what we found out through our partnership with the Hackett Group and a study we did is that it takes on average 41 hours of efforts time, and that the cycle time is 5 to 6 weeks. And the average organization does 565 sourcing event per year. And we're talking about 23,000 hours spent looking for information, and then to identify and qualify suppliers, incumbent or new, is the average time spent by fairly strategic people that, are looking for ways to gain better partnership, and for stakeholders are looking for speed and agility. So I saw a big gap there to solve.
Right. So it was something about faster or more efficient management of procurement department relationship, or?
Well, it's about speed and agility. It's about, enabling the organization or the business to be able to achieve their goals faster, and about scaling procurement as a function. And when I look back at why is it taking so long? Why is there so much friction in the process? Looking at where do people go for information today, it's disaggregated, right? It's all this data. It's not because there's no data. There's a ton of data. Exactly. But it's not connected in a way that provides real-time insight so that you can make better, faster decision. And so, when we ask any leadership team who's built sort of the toolkit to support category management, it's typically, we ask stakeholders, we use Google, right? Yeah. I mean, everybody will admit, hopefully, to that. They subscribe to market intelligence, looking at report, typically just to support further the decision, but doesn't provide a lot of perspective of, what are these suppliers and how relevant they are, and sort of in greater detail. And then, there's the analysts and third-party analysts, and a lot of money spent outsourcing, especially if you're looking at talent spend where, there's not a ton of risk to outsource, but you're still, by outsourcing, you're losing a lot of opportunities to bring that spend under management yourself and automating some of these processes that would, benefit the organization, and learning and opportunities to either savings or to, enable more innovation into the organization. And so, what we've built essentially is using today's technology that we use, on our day-to-day lives, where we can basically access and find anything in a way that we can take an organization supplier master data, which tends to sit into either ERP or a portal, or as an attempt to centralize it into an Excel or SharePoint. And that information is typically limited to what that company knows and doesn't have additional perspective. It's typically manually maintained, which can be very costly. And if it's stale, people will have to circumvent it to be able to supplement with additional data to make decisions. And so a list is not enough, right? And so what we've essentially built is a cloud platform that leverages machine learning to take that data and upgrades it into our platform, optimize the supplier information, cleanses it, remove duplicates, automate the information, and serves it back into a fully searchable format that anyone that has the rights or approval to use Tailbook can access, can contribute to the information by sharing knowledge, and then use to increase the speed and the quality of their decisions. And so with using Tealbook, our clients are seeing improvement in speed and quality and cycle time by up to 90%. So it's typically 1 hour of effort to identify, qualify suppliers, and you can start an RFP or an auction fairly quickly, typically less than a week.
Interesting. And one more aspect that I thought, Stephany, when you were describing this, and this aspect comes from actually my own experience when I was changing the jobs within procurement. When I entered new departments, it was always a hassle connected to succession planning. People who were working before me sometimes couldn't prepare a proper folder with the catalog of suppliers or contracts and things like that. And the same was for me when I was leaving my job. Also, there was sometimes nobody to hand over. Of course, it was in the beginning of 2000s that I'm recalling. But,
we're 18 years later.
It hasn't
same
changed,
thing. No, I mean, a lot of our clients, especially the larger ones who are very specialized, will say we don't need to find new suppliers. We have enough. We need to know who we do business with better and be able to share that information, horizontally so that people can access it. And it's sustainable and in a way that's automated as well. So it provides timely, updated, useful information back to our category managers. And what we're seeing is that, in their experience, they have someone who's been in a category for such a long time, who's become the expert. Like everybody goes to Mike because Mike knows everything about metal or a certain type of metal and who you negotiate with and what's the pricing and but the moment Mike leaves, for whatever reason, then you're essentially losing 20 years of knowledge and experience that hasn't been properly transferred. And so we had that in the instant, unfortunately, with one of our clients. Someone passed away, and 6 months later, they're still digging through his files to trying to figure out, who was the connections and what was negotiated and what are the terms and who are the suppliers. And so having that institutional knowledge being accessible. And we're not going to see, the new generation are not going to spend 20 years in a category to become that deep category expertise. Exactly. So when people tell me like, oh, my category, managers they come from that category and they know everything about it, it's impossible. Like things are changing so rapidly. It's not sustainable to expect someone to know everything about the information. It's one person's perspective. And people now are not going to spend 20 years. So they're going to turn over much faster. And we'll need to access, quickly relevant, trusted insight to help the business make better, faster decisions. And technically, the new generation are not going to want to have that deep level of expertise. They want to be able to move, faster through the chain and be able to access the information that they've grown up to access in real time. Or they're going to start automating it themselves, or they're not going to go into procurement.
Interesting. So you are now coming slowly into the topic which I wanted to elaborate the most, future of procurement, right? So in your opinion and in your observations and in your predictions, forecasting, how do you see that procurement departments will function when it comes to sourcing activities and to building the stronger supplier-buyer relationship? How do you foresee it, and what can our listeners use as some of the examples from you, some of the advice from you?
I think that, we talk to leadership team every day. And so, to hear the trends and what people are thinking about, and I'd say that most leadership team have some spectrum of a digital strategy or how they're going to initiate or in the process of being in their transformation. And I think all of them are seeing it being pretty daunting because they're looking at how fast things are happening and all the new technologies that are now available, and nobody really has the answers or know how to harness this new technology. And I often say it's not about selecting a technology, it's about a mindset. How are you thinking about embracing new technology or change, or how are you thinking about achieving this vision that you've put out to your team? And I would say that none of them are thinking about adding headcounts, right? You're not going to get more people to do the job. And so you have to look at how do I leverage technology? What type of people do I want to hire in my team to enable change, to enable innovation and technology so that we can scale our efforts in a way that's much more enabling to our stakeholders. And so I think, I was at a conference recently talking about machine learning and AI, And not a lot of people, no, everybody's heard it, but not a lot of people really understand it. And I'd say very few know how to bring it within their organization.
Exactly. Can you tell a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. I think if you're looking at the leadership level of any organization and where you're going to make your investment into a new technology, and it's not so new, AI and machine learning, it's just becoming more mainstream, but where are you going to invest? And the priority will be customers, right? How do I create a better experience for my customers? How do I retain customers? How do I get more customers? And then it's going to go into, support, and then probably, legal before it touches procurement. Like if we're going to make an investment,
okay, that's what it is. Okay.
Right?
Okay.
We're not going to hire like a data scientist team to go and improve procurement's processes. And so I think procurement has to look at, coming to a place where you have to admit to yourself that you should be looking at technology, and how can you use technology to scale your effort and get ahead of the disruption, and really position yourself as a strategic partner. And to enable to do that, you have to be looking at ways to introduce technologies. And there's a lot of technologies today, and companies are doing amazing things that you don't have to make such a big investment. But that you can, they're solving very similar challenges across all the different companies and all the different procurement teams that you can sort of buy off the shelf, either subscribe to, and you don't have to make it such a big thing. You can start with a small use case and then test it, and then get people to see the value and embrace it and grow with it. But I think mostly what you have to look at is what is easily, what can easily be automated that has very low maybe value to us, where we're spending too much of our time. And so when I look at finding data as basic as finding or looking for contact information of suppliers, it's high value when you get the contact, but the process of finding the information is low value. And so if there's a way to be able to access real-time contact information or get response from suppliers in minutes, then you've now automated, accelerated something that is very tactical and shouldn't require your team to spend 23,000 hours a year on. So it's looking at, on that sort of chart, what is very tactical and low value, to then moving towards more strategic and start really looking at, implementing new technologies to solve some of this, and so that your team can move more and more and more on a high value, high strategy, and have a lot more impact into the top line and bottom line.
Fantastic. I have written the phrase that you said. I don't know if you said it spontaneously, or the purpose of using technology is to scale your effort. I really love this. Your effort. This is exactly what it needs. And Stephany, moving or building on that phrase you said, how ready is technology today to run a little bit more advanced of these things you said about the AI and machine learning? I mean, can we automate, for example, fully running the RFQ based on our specification and volume expectation, and then introducing it into the platform like yours, and then expect a good outcome automatically? Or still you think that a person or a human brain is needed to run such exercises, such quotations?
Well, I think what people forget, and it's changing, when we talk to people, how is your data structured, or where do you find the information? We leverage machine learning to be able to build knowledge and then aggregate a lot of data point to deliver insight, sort of personalized insight. But that comes from people, right? Machine learning is the ability to make decision based on how people would make decision. So bringing a machine learning platform today, not next year, because you're losing a whole year of capturing some intelligence, enables teams to start learning from decisions that are being made from suppliers that are liked for certain things or preferred, or looking at trends and spend or risk or sustainability, capabilities, relevance to my business, relevance to the world. All of this is learning, and all we're offering is a platform that at a baseline will provide automated information, but it's by using it that you're now able to retain it. It doesn't stay in someone's head, right? So if Mike leaves, people now have access. If someone starts, they don't get a binder full of information that they're probably not going to really be able to leverage effectively. They're just going to be able to plug in access the data and be able to right away be able to support decision, because the insight from it will be relevant. So people are needed. And even within our process, we have what we call VET, which is the ability to build a list based on the recommendation that you're getting, and be able to invite other stakeholders or other category managers to participate. And then they can go in and say, I don't agree with this company, or you forgot this one. There's an element of knowledge that is so critical to adding, right, to the machine learning that really comes from personal experience. And that's what today you don't really have that access easily unless you're working directly with someone or you're asking them in person. And so contributing to making, those choices, adding that personalized experience is really, really critical to making the right decisions. And the other element of people is, how do you today share information across the organization, especially when it comes from innovation? I heard recently the leadership of a large company saying that when they come back from conferences and they meet innovative suppliers, they have a town hall meeting and they present these suppliers. And you're just like, in today's world, when that requires people to be in that room, to pay attention and to have a relevant need for that innovation at the exact moment, pretty much, or they're not going to retain the information properly. And so what, in a technology like ours, where I'm attending maybe an accelerator program, or I'm at a conference and I'm seeing a case study being presented that's really innovative and possibly eventually applicable to my company, just to be able to look up that supplier, add notes, connect to them, tag them for what I just heard about, add, information that would be valuable to my peers, and say I tag them for innovation. Well, anybody in my organization now will be able to search through innovation, or based on the capabilities that they may be looking for, that supplier will come up. They'll see that they're connected to me. They'll see my notes from where I met them. Suddenly, I'm able to bring in that information instantly within my organization so that other people can leverage it. And that's something that today has been really difficult to access. It's been sitting in binders in people's head.
Interesting. Stephany, and then if you can share some of the examples, you are meeting a lot of the companies that you're consulting, that you're implementing your platform, and you're also attending, you were mentioning the recent conference you were attending with the super interesting participants. Can you share maybe one or two examples of AI, machine learning, some sort of technology of the future being implemented in those companies successfully? And how does it look from inside? What were your wow moments?
I always find that when you put these events together, it takes a little courage, because you don't know who's going to show up and if anyone's going to show up and what's going to be, talked about. What I reached out to some of our customers who are leveraging Tealbook, among other technology, to drive change, real change within their organization. And they agreed to come and speak, and we brought forward-thinking procurement executives together. So we had 32 people in the room in New Jersey about a month ago. We had $200 billion of spend in that room. And the premise was not to find answers necessarily, but to share best practice, share vision, and talk about some of the challenges of driving change. And then how do you think about, bringing and inspire, people to bring that back to their organization, and then sharing that with the broader community. And so, from an objective perspective, we had, great forward-thinking leaders, and some of there's no real surprise, because I knew who was attending. But what excited me the most is how engaged everybody was. And we had different level, mostly was senior level, but we had a few people that were just really interested in technology, and a few influencers. We had IBM that was there. Chris Sashak was speaking from the Hackett Group. We had Brett Kohlberg, who was a CPO at MDC Partner, who has now a consulting firm. And then we had procurement executives. And everyone had a very different use case. Even though they're leveraging our technology and other technologies, it's really what they identified within their organization that would drive the most impact. And that's where they chose to sort of focus their use case for driving these changes and leveraging data and technology. And so we had, one of the example is Walter Charles he's a CPO at Biogen, Walter came from Kellogg, Kraft, and J&J before that, and he's a very forward-thinking leader. If you have never seen Walt speak, get a front row ticket to his next talk, because he's very engaging and so passionate. And what he talked about is exactly that Pareto model to look at. We've been focusing on that 20%. Meanwhile, there's so much value and savings that you can unlock. And how do you identify the disruptors in all the different categories? Because we're in a very changing, disruptive environment today, and so very engaged talking about discovery. Why do you look at 3 bids and or 3 suppliers or 3 RFPs in a bid, but why are you not looking at getting more access to more suppliers? And if you can use technology to do this in real time, then you can really, increase competition, increase access to innovation, disruptors, diverse suppliers that can really drive more value to the organization. So he was very, he's so passionate, and we have a report, a summary of all these talk that we've published. If you go to our website at tailbook.com, at the bottom there's a news section, and there's a publication section. It's called Leading the New Transformation with Data and Technology. So if you want to hear more about Walt's framework. And then we had Doug Paul from GE talking about how do you leverage master data in a company as complex as GE that has very vertically focused master data traditionally, and information has been typically siloed in all of the areas of the business. And so they've taken on a very large initiative to provide a master data and onboarding that was going to give them a horizontal view, and then leveraging technology to supplement so that everyone can speak the same language and you're not caught into a very structured code system that has been traditionally developed, to make that more of an experience for users, so that they can, when they're searching for information, the experience is very similar to, why can you not buy a shirt, or you find information about a shirt the way that you're able to find a widget. And then we had Bart Riekman from Suez, so the CPO of Suez North America, who's originally from Belgium, who's also worked on the tech side before becoming a CPO. And Bart provided a very humble approach to driving change within an organization as established and has so much history as Suez, and then how they were digitalizing their operations, and then how do they meet all the requirements by having to now access all these different data points to support compliance and regulatory and risk and sustainability. And there's so much now that you have to consider, and there's no home for it. It's sitting on all different platforms that people now have to access and put the pieces together. And how can you centralize all these data points in a way that delivers insight that people can make faster and better decision that can be shared across the organization? And then talked into more specific about diversity and the change and the importance of leading with diversity, and really supporting efforts being made, and we're still challenged with making efforts in diversity, which shouldn't be the case in 2018. Anyway, so that was a long sort of summary of our talk, but I think what I took most out of it is how passionate people are about, and how hungry people are to hear about change, and how can they come back to their organization and select or choose the use cases that they feel would have the most impact, and start somewhere, right, to be able to drive change, show the outcomes, and then be able to get buy-in from the rest of the organization.
And what is very important is not to wait until what happens, but to be in forefront of this change. And this is what I found the most interesting to the outcome of such conferences like you have described. If you're just waiting and observing what's going on, you may at one point of time understand that you are the only one who keeps on observing.
Or you're disrupted. You've waited too long, and there's so many examples now of disruption in industries that we would have never thought, right, would have been disrupted. And we heard that if you were on the Fortune 500 list, you could be there for 90 years. And now I think the average is 15 years. And you're looking at the companies today that are on the top list, they're all technology companies. And so, I feel strongly that procurement has the opportunity today to be the insight for the organization and be able to become the driver of using and leveraging data to help the organization, stay ahead and enable that innovation to really drive change and make sure that the company is competitive and remains competitive in this environment. And so I think moving from that tactical kind of check the box to be able to leverage insight and drive that kind of value is tremendous. And you're not going to need to earn your seat at the table. You're just going to, it's going to be there because you're going to be contributing to creating that kind of impact within your organization.
Definitely love it a lot, Stephany. And thank you so much for your precious time. I know that you are now in a hurry to come to the next meeting. One thing that I will take away and that I will share with our listeners will be this published report that you have mentioned. So I will attach it to the show notes. Definitely, I will attach the link to your platform, Tealbook. And then before we finish the interview, what will be the main takeaway, the biggest advice that you want to share to our future procurement community?
Oh, there's so many. I would say be open-minded and don't, and someone said that at the event that one of the CPOs said, I don't need to be told to change. We know that. I need to know how. So I think be inquisitive, ask, share, give, if you're an executive, give a free sort of jail-free card to your team to try something new. To bring in innovation within your organization without, negative consequence. If people don't take that kind of risk, you're not going to benefit from the reward. And don't get used to stats. Don't get used to things. And I say that when people are using even our technology as human, we get used to things and we work around things that are not working well quickly.
I like it.
And so the second that you see inefficiencies, challenge it, in a way that is positive and can drive change and be resilient. I mean, it's true if you build a tech company or if you're building a procurement function or even you're managing your own career and looking at that next leadership role. If you're showing initiative and leadership and innovation, you have the opportunity to get ahead so much faster than doing the right thing every time if you have to take those risks. And that's what I've learned from all the CPOs that I've met, that they've taken chances. They've challenged, how things were being done. And it's because of that they were able to see the rewards.
Thank you so much, Stephany. So challenging yourself, developing constantly and being on the way and having innovation. These are fantastic advice from you that definitely are worth a million. Thank you so much once again for your time, and wish you all the best with your platform and with inspiring other people like you did just now.
Well, thank you, Robert. I appreciate the opportunity.
Wow, what a great interview it was. So excited to talk today to Stephany Lapierre, the founder and CEO of Tealbook. And once again, we were discussing the questions around using the technology for procurement. She's super great and super energized. And I hope you have found some inspiration and some motivation for yourself. Don't forget to download the bonus materials from this podcast. In the show notes, you will find the link to the special report from Tealbook about leading the new transformation with data and technology. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to our Future Procurement podcast and to share it to your friends and colleagues. My name is Robert Freeman, and this was Future Procurement. We'll talk to you soon.